Greetings, friends at Goated IB Escalators. Today I'm with the iconic teacher, Mr. Coyle, of our history program here at CIS. Now today, he's my second person that I'm going to be interviewing throughout this series, Goated IB Escalators, ex-teachers, and today we're going to do something very special. Now, Mr. Coyle, I've prepared for you a history paper 1 to do with escalators. Now, as you can see here, I have prepared some problems, I have prepared some sources at the back, and I will just have you verbally, I'll give you maybe a couple minutes reading time, and then you can write down a few notes, and then you can verbally answer them. So, take your time, and tell me when you're ready.
But just before we continue, I'd like to interject right here and actually introduce to you what I gave Mr. Coyle right there. What I gave him was a paper 1 history paper. That is, I gave to him 2 sources. The first source I called source B, which I took from the thumbnail of my escalator vlog for Langham Place. The second source I used I called source D. This one was just a screenshot of my very first escalator review, the one that I did in Times Square. Now, as for the actual questions on the paper, I modeled these exactly as they would be on a paper 1 history exam. That is, I of course had question 1A. According to source D, what was the public perception towards escalators in the early 21st century? Then I had question 1B, what is the message of source B? Then of course I had question 2, with reference to its origin, purpose, and content, assess the values and limitations of source D for historians studying the escalators of the early 21st century. And last but not least, question number 3, using your own knowledge, analyze the ways in which the invention of the escalator led to the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931. Now that you've seen the paper, without much further ado, let's see what sort of answers Mr. Coyle had for us today.
Okay, I'm ready.
You're prepared? Okay, so first of all, let's just start off with question 1A. According to source D, what was the public perception towards escalators in the early 21st century?
Well, according to source D, the public perception was that escalators were unsafe, that they were dirty, however they were convenient, and they could provide excitement in what would be the otherwise dull life of a Hong Konger.
Now we shall move on to question 1B. What is the message of source B?
The message of source B, dated September 2021, is that escalators should have a danger warning, that they should, that one would have to be brave to go on it, but then again, it also should be an experience because it would be an adventure.
Thank you, sir. Now, question 2. With reference to its origin, purpose, and content, assess the values and limitations of source D for historians studying the escalators of the early 21st century.
Wow. The value to a historian studying escalators in the 21st century is one, that it was an eyewitness account, as it was sourced on August 12, 2021. And therefore it would be of great value to a historian because they would have that eyewitness view into current day escalators. However, one limitation would be that the escalator, that it only deals with one escalator in Times Square, Causeway Bay. And if you really wanted to get a insight into limitations, they should go and use the escalator in the HSBC Bank.
Is that a recommendation?
In Central, because that is the most frightening experience of escalators I have ever experienced. It was so frightening that I sat down to go down because because I was feeling dizzy.
My goodness.
And the security guard came and looked at me. But I managed to get out of the door. So the limitation would be it only deals with one escalators, and there are dirtier and more frightening examples in Hong Kong, believe me.
I'll take those recommendations into account, and I will certainly explore that HSBC escalator. Now finally, using your own knowledge, analyze the ways in which the invention of the escalator led to the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931.
This is where I would fail this paper. Or this is where I definitely would not be in civil territory, because I have got absolutely no idea. I have an idea about the invasion of Manchuria in 1931, but I just can't imagine there being many escalators in Manchuria in 1931.
Well, you see, sir, my answer to this question, the big reason I would give, primarily, is the idea that the reason which we established in class, the reason for which the Japanese invaded Manchuria in 1931, is because they felt a need for things like land and resources.
Absolutely.
Now, I think resources is what's significant here, because one thing that Manchuria had was steel.
Sure did,
And
yes.
what do you need to build escalators?
Steel.
Steel, that's exactly it. And since the Japanese wanted to participate in this trend of escalators, modernizing and increasing the technology in their industries in Japan, I think certainly they would have needed a lot more steel for that, and as a result, this would have added to their incentive to invade Manchuria.
Okay, so now you have changed my entire perception of history. So the reason that they invaded Manchuria was to take the steel back to Tokyo to put the escalators into the new trendy stores that they were building in Tokyo, because, and now I understand it, because they weren't exporting their goods, the silk and so on, to America because of the Great Depression, and they were going to use the escalators in the new superstores, malls or whatever, of Tokyo. And also, what Manchuria also had, of course, was coal. And what you get from coal is dirt. And that would give in the escalator lots of dirt also.
I would teach you a lesson here, as students teach
You are.
Teach you a lesson. Any question can be answered in history as long as you're innovative enough. You see, you may not think that this idea that the invention of the escalator would lead to something as far away and unrelated as the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, yet somehow we have managed to find a link. So I would just say, I'll just finalize and summarize by giving you a score right here. For the first question, I thought your structure was there. However, I would give it 2 out of 3 marks. For question 1B, I would give it 2 marks. However, I did find myself slightly disagreeing with the intentions. For question 2, I would...
Funny enough, 1 second, Alexander, when I meet you today at 3 o'clock to give you your assessment back, that's really what I think you got also for the first 2.
This is tragic. With regards to question 2 then, I would give you a total of 3 marks. Once again, just 1 short of the full 4 marks.
Sounds like yours. It sounds almost like yours.
And finally, for question 3, which thankfully was not on my test, I would give you 0 marks since I had to fill in the blanks for you. However, I do value your later contributions to the topic. So, with a total of 2 and 3, that would be a total of 7 marks for your test. And Mr. Coyle, to be quite honest,
That's a 4.
that is a 4 indeed, and we're going to have to figure these things out in class.
Okay. Can I appeal the mark? Can I ask for a week?
I can moderate with Mr. Wilson.
That's right. That's the answer. That's the teacher's answer. If you want to question the mark, you say it can go up, but it also can go down.
Whatever you do, don't send your parents after me demanding a 7. We can have this talk at your parent-teacher conferences in mid-November.
You know how it's done. You know how we do it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Coyle,
Thank
for
you.
coming on.
I'm going to go home and cry now. Thank you very much. Brilliant.